I hope that you can now see the presentation and
Yes,
presenter
it's
mode.
working.
Yeah.
It's working great.
Okay, so yeah, thanks again for the introduction, and I'm very glad to be back here at Lingo Systems Tech Talk. As Andre said, I want to give you a little insight on how we approach projects like these and how we engage with customers during the project. For some reason, the slides are not okay. Now it works. Just a quick agenda, what I will cover in the presentation, or what I want to cover in the presentation. Just briefly, what my understanding of a TBMS is, especially when it comes to planning and developing such systems. I will have a look at which components it can include and which functionalities it can offer. That depends on your use cases, of course, but the overall point is to see, well, is it complex? Is it an easy system to work with and an easy system to develop, or is it more of a challenging approach to the project? And then I will talk about how we are going to handle projects like this, or we actually approach projects like this. We've already heard a lot about this from Patrick, so thanks again for your presentation. And at the end, as a kind of a little outlook, I want to have a look at why would you maybe want to develop your own custom TBMS. We've heard a lot of insight already by Patrick about this. I've drawn up some comparison between a standard and a custom TBMS, and we've got some opinions by experts from the industry. So we've done a survey, and I'd like to give you a little sneak peek on that as well. So just very briefly, what is a translation business management system? So I think the main point is it's basically a software that offers you a solution to have an end-to-end translation project management of all the projects you are working on, providing all the different language-based services you offer to your clients. It usually offers some kind of automation capabilities regarding repetitive tasks, or as we already heard, also content connection. So you can also automate entire workflows from retrieving contents from a customer's content system like Adobe Experience Manager or any other CMS, if the team BMS in question has a connector, of course. And you can then automate the entire process, basically from content retrieval to even translation, if you want to use machine translation or something like that, to publishing the content back to the original system or to a specific target system. It can also include language resources. I will have that in the next slide. And the overall goal is to also increase your productivity. It also it depends on your use case, of course, but if you can automate certain steps, you can work on more projects without using so much resources. In the beginning, if you would do the overall process manually. I just tried to display the possible complexity of a TBMS here in this little graphic. So all the components it could include, as I said, it depends on your use case, but usually we have a project management component, we have customer data management, CAD tool integrations. Those components do not need to be part of the TBMS itself, but they could be external systems. Like, for instance, you could have your customer data managed in a CRM system, but then a TBMS would at least have to be capable of syncing this data with the CRM. And that, on the other hand, needs to be included and adds complexity to the system. So the more components you would want to have in a TBMS, the more complex it gets, and the more people are also involved. US LSPs know this. You usually have team of project managers, linguists, IT department, QA departments. You have vendor management, and if you're planning to buy such a system, or even as we will talk about today, develop your system from scratch or for yourself, you also need to keep in mind that all of those people have opinions of what kind of features should be included, and you need to prioritize them in order to first be able to start somewhere with a project. We already heard something about that from Patrick, and that adds another challenging aspect to such projects. A TBMS project usually also has, or in my personal experience, at the beginning of such a project, if you decide that you want to either buy a TBMS or develop it yourself, the requirements are not that clear in the beginning. You might have some ideas what you want to do, and of course, if you buy a system, it already provides you a lot of functionalities. But especially if you are planning to build the TBMS system yourself, you might have some ideas, as I said, but it's not clear what it all should cover in detail. And if you would approach a software project like this with some standard project management methods, like, for instance, waterfall or others that require a lot of planning beforehand. Let's say you write very detailed requirements sheet detailing every aspect of a TBMS and what should be delivered when. And if you do that, project costs, especially for planning, can get out of hand very quickly. And that's why sometimes, or very often, to be honest, we probably all heard of it, that software projects get millions for planning, but they are never even started. So it's very important to avoid such common pitfalls, like having a uncoordinated or unclear goal with the project, having ambiguous requirements, or not even knowing the industry very well. So you could have super much knowledge in software development if you don't know what the industry actually needs, or what is the goal for the customer with the product. You will probably create a software that no one's going to use. So I'd like to talk about how we approach such projects in order to avoid those pitfalls and those projects that have very, very high costs and are not going to be worked on. So I will not go much into detail on this slide because Andre already did this in the beginning. So, but over the years, we were able to build a strong understanding of the industry and of the needs that LSPs have with different kind of technologies. And we worked on different projects here: translation business management, as we've already heard, customer vendor, freelancer portals. We extended standard TBMS solutions regarding connectivity and also the overall functionalities, and integrated CAD tools into custom processes or systems, implemented machine translation providers, and also some functionalities regarding reporting, document analysis, and other things. As Patrick already has mentioned, we usually prefer to work in agile mode. So there are other project management methodologies available also for software development. But as I said, especially if the project you're working on has, in the beginning, not all the requirements defined in a certain way, or if you expect a project, and this is one big point here, if you expect to have a lot of, or not a lot, but some changes within the project, you might want to go with the Scrum methodology, as we do. I will go into detail what this means in just a second, but with applying agile methodologies and also techniques and systems, we try to minimize the risks in our projects as much as possible, especially regarding developing things that are not focused on the user, and yeah, also regarding bugs or anything. We aim, if we commit to make a project, we aim to make it a success. And in order to do that, we try to involve the customer as soon as possible. Patrick has already talked about this. If you have an agile approach, you want to have a close collaboration with the customer. You want to have a product owner either at customer side or in your own team that can answer very specific questions regarding their fields of expertise. As I showed in the screen before, there are a lot of different areas to cover. And we also want to provide our customer, of course, with satisfactory service and overall a functioning software. And in order to do so, we work in an agile way. We use Scrum as our main methodology. Of course, if there's any requirement by the customer regarding this, we are able to talk about this. But if, for instance, we start a new project, we choose to work in a Scrum methodology. So what that means is basically that we or no, I will better explain it on an example. So let's assume Claudia, an example CEO of a mid-sized LSP, comes to us, and we have our first meeting. We get to know each other. We present what we can do, what we've done so far, and Claudia explains what their current situation is, that she and her company are active in the industry for years, but they want to or they have the feeling that they need to change and transform the way they're working right now to be able to still be, to be able to still compete on the market, to provide more specific services like automation, portals, workflows, etc. Because they might not attracting the customers they want when they are participating in RFQs or anything. And so they decide that they want to invest in a translation business management system. And we at Lingo Systems, of course, agree that we would be a great partner to do that. And then some basic steps follow. So usually we start with a workshop where we let the customer explain from their view what they would like to achieve. As Patrick has already mentioned, usually there's some kind of goal if you talk about building your own custom TBMS or even building a connector or some other technical solution that you want to implement into your existing business processes. So you would like to, we would listen to them, let them explain what they would like to achieve, and take down all the ideas that come into place, right? Which will then later form the product backlog that Patrick has already mentioned. And if something's unclear, we would, of course, try to understand it better in order to implement the functionality, or to not take something down that is confusing. So, and then the product backlog is formed. It's basically a wish list of everything you want your product to be able to do. Usually we then summarize the result of such a workshop, categorize the ideas. So first of all, it's just a list of ideas. We create a first concept and maybe also a draft of a system design. So during the workshop, there will also be questions regarding maybe programming language. So we mainly use Java, but we can adapt to any language that the customer would like to work on. Let's say you have a system written in Ruby, for instance, which I have experience with. So we would talk about this, but also the overall environment that you want to use your software in and things like that. We would share the results of those workshop with the customer and schedule usually a follow-up meeting where we talk about the project, contractual topics, financial topics, budgets, etc., and try to find structure in the product backlog. What is the the overall functionality that the customer actually wants to have in the first release of the product. What are the important user stories or epics that we should have in the first release? And of course, we do a rough estimation on the project's costs that are involved. As Patrick has already mentioned, we work in sprints. So that means we have, can probably explain it better showing the graphic again. We work in sprints with a length of 2 weeks usually. So we talk to the product owner at customer side or at our side and decide which of the stories are ready to be worked on. If there's something unclear or the requirements are not clear, or if the story is too big, as it was mentioned already, we try to split it to have more manageable tasks. And then we work on those tasks. So we put it into a sprint backlog. We talk to the customer what can be achieved in such a sprint, and agree on to or commit on to deliver these stories after the sprint. And then there's a very important part, which is the sprint review and the sprint retrospective. But in the sprint review, we show the results basically to the customer. The sprint review can also be, as I said, some kind of meeting where we present the results of the sprint, but also it could be a testing period that the customer has to just test the results themselves and give us some feedback on on whether we have implemented it correctly or whether they might have found that they've missed something in the requirements. And with such a rapid process of 2 weeks, so usually the first usable product or MVP in a very small sense, I'd say, where the customer can actually see something like a UI or the first things we've agreed on is ready in 4 to 6 weeks. So we can very rapidly create a benefit or at least something that the customer can test and can give feedback on. Okay, and we do this in sprints, so we have smaller manageable tasks. We share those boards usually with the customers as well, so there's transparency on where we are in the project and what's been worked on already. We daily have in the team the Scrum Master, and we have daily a meeting called Daily Scrum, where we can clarify what's the progress is in the team. And if something comes up, any holdups in the process, anything that's unclear, we directly engage with the customer. That's what Patrick has also mentioned, because we don't want to implement something that might not fulfill the requirement. And as we have a closer collaboration, we can directly engage during the process without just finishing the entire product, let's say, with other methodologies. You would do it like this, and then after 6 months you get a product and it does not fulfill your needs. So we use the agile mindset in order to avoid this. So one common thing that can happen is that if we present something to a customer, let's say it's a face-to-face meeting, they usually check whether the requirements are met or not. And sometimes, let's say we had to implement a project request wizard where you can also request a quote or something. Then in this example, the customer notices that they can request a project and can request a quote as, or create a project and request a quote as required, but they cannot save the project information as some kind of template to quickly create the same project with the same metadata again and again and again. And well, there's something that obviously has been missed during the requirements engineering process. So it's a new requirement and we can add this. That's no problem, because in an agile way of working, you try not to avoid changes in plans. You anticipate them. You know they are part of the process, but you react on them, and you can do this in different ways. So if a if, for instance, we have a predefined plan for a specific release we are working on with the customer, let's say it's the first version of the product, and you've got a deadline that you want to keep us, and then we can talk about this. So if it's a very specific and important story, we could have a look in the backlog to see whether we can shift it with some other story of the same length or not, so that we can still include it in, for instance, the release that we want to ship in a few weeks. We can also discuss increasing the budget for the project so that we could put more manpower, so another developer, for instance, onto the project to also work on this story and include it in the upcoming release. Or if we are more flexible when it comes to releases, we heard Patrick say that way, about every 4 weeks, I think it was, we do release in that project. So we could also agree, okay, maybe it's very important, but you want to release the first version with the agreed features, and then we could just have a minor release 1 sprint later where we can add this as well. And this is also something that I see is very common in ongoing projects. So if the first release or if the first versions of the projects are already there, then it's a more fluid process when it comes to working on new stories and releasing them on the go. Especially if your system is in the cloud, you probably not even notice any downtime when the new system is added. Right. And then we have a continuous process, as I said. If the first release has been done, major version 1, we usually have a continuous process where we add new features or also work on sprint feedback. So every time a sprint ends, we have a sprint review, as I said, and we could get any feedback to the features we've integrated. They would obviously go and have to be worked on in the next sprint. And also we have something that's called sprint retrospective. So in an agile process, you try to continuously improve the processes that you use to work on a project. We check what went well, what might not, and try to improve the overall process. Let's say we should have asked the customer earlier on some unclear thing, or the release did not went well, so we try to evaluate what went wrong to improve for the next iteration, for the next sprint, and for the overall project. Okay, I'd like to have a quick look at why you would want to build a custom TBMS, because there are already standard solutions available. And this is a very personal view. Manufacturers by those projects might disagree, but from my point of view, those standard TBMS solutions usually follow a more general best practice approach and try to put as much functionality in it as possible, which I call a monolithic approach. You might not even use all of the functionalities, but they try to provide it anyhow. They have a standardized solid functions that work for widespread of workflows and possible customers, but they might not be able to easily be adapted to specific workflows. So if you do not work in the way they think the general approach is very, it can be very challenging to work with these products or to adapt them to your needs. One is also a bit dependent on the product roadmap, even though they usually have something where you can send in some ideas what they could include in the product, but it might not be feasible for them, or it might not be just the function that they want to include. So last step would usually be to buy some kind of custom development if they offer this to integrate functionalities that you need. But of course, if you have a general approach yourself, those systems could be exactly what you need. On the other hand, we have custom TBMS solutions. So yeah, those systems are actually built tailored to your needs. Therefore, you can integrate custom workflows or functions, and you can also quickly integrate new functions, especially if you work with an agile process, because it's not a rolling release, but you can easier release new functionalities working this way. You are more independent from a general product roadmap because you are responsible to define the roadmap you want to have for your system. But also, it must be said, as Patrick has already mentioned, the initial costs might be higher, especially if you start from scratch. You have to build it all on your own. If you've got a legacy system that you need to migrate, of course, data and maybe the processes you already have implemented there, it might not be that high, but initial costs can be higher. And for some use cases where you actually just want the basic approach, the possibilities you have with a custom system can also be a challenging complexity for you, because you might not know where to start, or it's too difficult to define it and build it on your own. But in those cases, you're lucky if you have a good partner like us, like Lingo Systems, so we can support you there as well. And whoops, sorry. Yeah, lastly, I would like to briefly talk about some feedback that we've received by members of the industry, experts of the industry. So I'd like to thank Marie, Steffen, and Valeria for doing a lot of very interesting surveys with experts of the industry and also with our customers. And in this specific one, we wanted to learn about satisfaction with existing solutions on the market. So which ones do our customers or participants of the survey basically use? Are they satisfied with their solutions? What are the pain points? And do they have any ideas of improvement? And I just would like to give you some of the results. So a lot of them used Flunet, as we can see. We have XTRF on the list as well. So wide variety of standard systems that are available on the market. And I found it interesting to see that, of course, there are pain points and was also feedback on what could be improved with those systems. Those are some examples here. So especially reporting was mentioned, because business intelligence and reporting is becoming more and more and more important for LSPs for internal purposes, but also as a service that they would like to offer to customers. And those standard systems that you can buy on the market obviously provide reporting capabilities, but usually they are also based on best practices and on standard reports that the manufacturer thinks would be the ones you would want to use. And unfortunately, it's often not possible to customize those, or you actually have to invest a lot of time and money to get the information that's already there in the database, for instance, but in a report that you want to use for internal purposes or with a customer. And those are basically some pain points that we also hear when talking to customers when they approach us regarding creating a custom TBMS, especially user experience and overall UI is mentioned a lot. And it was interesting to see also a lot of improvement ideas. Some of them might be that specific to the LSP or to the expert who's mentioned it. So it might not be feasible for a standard system like the ones mentioned or others that are already in the market to implement these. That is as it is, right? But you could, for instance, if you want to have something like a job assignment in waves, you could implement this with custom TBMS. So it's very interesting to see the opinions, and yeah, to get some feedback on the existing systems on the market, but also on the needs of the customers. So if we evaluate all the results, we get also a better understanding of what is needed and what we can work on in the future.